learning a lot about data. And so it was at that time, still not having any prospects of design jobs, I decided to go back for my master's in business analytics. I always wanted to do something a little bit different than just to focus purely on design, because I felt, for me personally, the design profession wasn't enough of an intellectual challenge. And so I needed to do something slightly different. And so that propelled me to go for my master's in business analytics. And then I went from just sort of being a BIM coordinator to a BIM manager. And then when I finished my degree, I ended up going and working for the design technology group at CRTKL. So I'd still been working at CRTKL, just in different capacities. And then eventually I led the design technology team, which included, all the stuff that I was doing in BIM, user experience design, computational design.
And I want to understand a little bit more about, like you said, the I in BIM. Because obviously you have an interest in analytics. Can you just share with us maybe a couple of use cases or projects that you worked on where analytics were a key part of that project, and how are they used to help benefit and move the project forward?
Sure. So a lot of the projects that I worked in healthcare had, healthcare has a lot of expectations, right? Hospitals are extremely complex. In the planning stage, certain clients, whether they be government or entities like in Canada, could even be domestic projects here in the U.S. For like the VA, they have very specific requirements, and designers are not always extremely well versed in using data. So they look at spreadsheets, or they'll print literally a spreadsheet off or use a PDF of a spreadsheet and highlight it, when they could just pull that information out of the model. There's all these tools that can be used from these projects to be able to, if you put the data in and you build it in a right way, you don't need to print out a piece of paper and use a marker, right? You can have the system do that for you. And so I worked on a lot of projects like that, that I developed ways of pulling information from external databases, pulling information from the Revit model, automating data extraction, pulling those into a dashboard, and to be able to present that in a way to either the clients or our internal stakeholders to be able to review that content.
And you're kind of on both sides of the coin, or meaning, you do the analytics, and then you also have capabilities to do design as well. And one of the projects that you were sharing with me, before we went live is, I believe it was in the healthcare space. Can you share maybe a little bit more about that project and kind of?
Sure. Would you like to see it?
Yeah, I'd love to.
This client is they develop a product, right? So they're independent manufacturer. They're called Walters Healthcare Resources. They developed this product called INDAT, right? They call it a raceway. It's this sort of channel system that acts as a sort of chassis for all the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing services that go to an operating room. And so essentially you've got maybe three major systems here. You've got your internal, which is your mechanical devices, which supply air, your raceway, which supply gases and electrical, and then you have your exterior lighting. And then of course, the booms and lights are meant to go inside of it. But being able to trying to explain this to a client or a potential customer can be daunting when you're just kind of saying the words instead of actually showing what the capabilities are. And to be able to describe how this looks in a space is something that's kind of challenging to do. But like I said, getting this into Swift was not a direct path. So ended up having to bring it into Blender was my preferred route. That allowed me to modify the materials. Even though I mapped materials in Revit, they did not translate. Some of the sockets of the materials did, like it provided like a slot, but ultimately I ended up having to map materials to geometry, add lighting, and do all kinds of stuff. And it took me probably, I'm being generous, on the low end, 50 tries, probably closer to 100, and several hours. Now, I didn't bill the client for that work because I think a lot of that was experimental. But it took me a long time to understand. I'm not a Blender guy. I've sunk a decade of my career into Revit, so which I encourage people to learn other software. And so I decided to use Blender, which I'm really happy I did, but it's its own universe in itself. So it can be overwhelming when you're not used to some of the user interface. But ultimately, it's not as complicated as I thought it was. But there's so many good resources online that really help. So, and that was one of the other reasons why I chose Blender, is because there are so many open source resources. I do want to try using Twinmotion and Unreal, because I do want to do some virtual reality, and I also want to be able to have I want to be able to help other clients that have different workflows that are not this one. I had full sort of control over this, but I know for some of my architectural clients, going Unreal is going to be probably the better path forward versus this one, which was, it's more product based and less experience based, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's less on sort of the space than it is the sort of product and the object.
Excellent. Sean, thank you so much again for stopping by, and thank you to everyone watching. This has been Real Time Talk with Eagle 3D Streaming. I'm Quentin Anderson, and we will catch you all on the next show. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.